What if the secret to happiness wasn't found in success, money, or even time? Most of us spend our lives chasing happiness, believing we'll finally be happy when we have enough success, or we have enough money, or we have more certainty. But what if we're getting it all wrong? Today, I'm talking with Cochran, whose 22-year-old son, Christian, faced a terminal cancer diagnosis. Instead of asking, why me? He did something extraordinary. He lived with more joy, more love, and more presence than most of us do in a full lifetime. Simple daily mantra. A question we're going to discover during this episode is profound and life-changing. You're going to hear wisdom of a young man who had every reason to be bitter, but instead left behind a roadmap for unshakable happiness. If you love to be happy like I do, hit subscribe today, because happiness isn't just a feeling, it's a skill, and we're going to learn it now. Welcome to the Good Mood Revolution. What's up? Today we are talking with a good mood hero. My man, Christopher Cochran, has written a book called What's Good About Today. And Christopher, I'm going to let you kind of take it from here because you've got a really powerful story. Would you mind getting into the story?
Sure, Matt. Well, first, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it, and everyone who's listening. And my story is deeply intertwined really with my family's journey that has been both incredibly challenging, deeply transformative. My son, Christian, he was an extraordinary young man. He had a heart full of kindness, spirit, optimism. He had a way of bringing light into everyone he met. Christian was a graduate of Cook Honors College at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. He excelled academically, personally. He was someone who truly lived with a life of purpose. At the age of 22 years of age, Christian was diagnosed with a rare aggressive cancer. And as a family, my wife, my son Nick, my daughter Kate, and we walked that journey with him.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thanks.
And, I'm a father of 4. When you got the news that your little boy had terminal cancer, what did that do to you as a dad?
Oh, now you're taking me back in this mindset, which I do talk about in the book. We went through, and I won't go through all the details, of course, but, after blood test scans, we were summoned to Hillman Cancer Institute, which is a large cancer institute here in Pittsburgh. This is during COVID, so you could only have one parent. I assured his mother when we left this home, we went together, me and Christian, that everything was going to be okay, and when we walked into that room, as we waited for the doctors to walk in, 5 doctors walked into that room. They were all they had masks covering their face. I could only see their eyes, but I knew when they walked in that door, they were about to deliver the worst news you could possibly imagine that was going to, of course, impact Christian, his life, but also impact his family, his 2 brothers, his mother, and myself, and all those around him that he has impacted so greatly. I remember the news being delivered. I remember going dark. I remember fading very quickly. My eyes, and I'm not a guy who passes out. I just remember that sinking feeling, not a good feeling. And I just remember Christian putting his hand on my shoulder at that moment and telling me, "Dad, everything's going to be just fine. You don't need to worry." And he had that ability to just, and I felt it, and it calmed me, because I knew as long as I was listening to Christian, I was in good hands. And of course, he made the doctors feel good, making jokes to make them feel comfortable. But as a father, it shook me to my knees. I was knowing, of course, this is the outcome. We knew what was going to happen. Had to go back home and tell that news to the family.
I couldn't imagine. How did you break it to his mom?
We went to specifically, we were in our back sunroom. We sat down. I told my wife exactly what had transpired. Christian was with us, of course, when I told the story. He assured his mom that everything was going to be fine, and he wished. That's at the point when we had said we were so sorry. What do you say as a parent? You just been told your son's not only got cancer. Christian had cholangiocarcinoma, which on the scale of cancer, all cancers are bad. On the scale of cancer, if, of the 5, it's the worst that you can have. And it's a death sentence. And so there's no stopping it, especially in young people. It's a very rare, it's mostly seen in Southeast Asia, seen mostly in old people here in the U.S. But how does a kid from rural Pennsylvania get this kind of cancer? And so I think my wife, of course, it's our firstborn. He is the center of our family. Christian is the center of the family. He's my best friend. He's my wife's best friend. My 2 other children's best friend. He's close in age to them. So it shakes you beyond. There's no way that I can instill it on anyone to know that until you have actually been through that, because it's a process. Right. You know the outcome. I knew the outcome. I knew the statistics. I knew that what doctors were telling me. I didn't exactly give that out to my wife. Right. Because, I always want to remain hopeful. But I mean, I knew, and Christian knew the outcome as well. And so I think that's what's extraordinary about him. He never stopped living. He never stopped anything.
Did you ever waver in your faith?
Absolutely. Sure. Of course, I don't think that when you are put in these kinds of situations, as a lot of people around the world and listeners that may be listening have gone through, they've gone through all kinds of different pain, whether that is grieving a child, which is the worst of the worst, because it's like sticky glue. It just will never come off of you, or a death of a family member that's close to you. But I think maintaining your faith is critical. But you do question it, of course. Why? You go through the whys. And, he's such a good boy. He's as good as any soul that's on this earth.
I'd love to know what you came up with. Why? And that's a question that of course, when we're going through it is just going to torment us.
Yeah.
But I'm sure now that you've written the book and we know there's so many good things that have come from his attitude, and his legacy is even bigger than maybe it could have been if he had never gotten sick. But, a lot of times people do question their faith at this time, and they say, this doesn't seem right. Like a fair and just God wouldn't take such a beautiful soul so young. So because I know faith is a big piece of your life. How did you come back to God, and what kind of answers did you come up with to this hard question?
So, never left God. He was always with me. I know he was. I have a relationship with God and Christ. It's like any relationship, right? I can get very angry. I can apologize for what I say, and ask for forgiveness. All those things that relationships are. I have a relationship. But there are 2 fundamental things that helped me. And I say this when I go out and I do speaking engagements, and people ask me, like, how can you even get past this? And there are people who don't. There are really 2 things. First, this is what helped me. Everybody is different, but this is 2 things I think can help people. 1, remain humble before God. Always remain humble before God. And that means I am not worthy of God's love. I remind myself of that every day, that I am not worthy of his love. And I am always trying to do good things on this earth while I'm here for others, to help them. And so remaining humble is important. Number 2, very important. Remember this: you are not in control. When you realize that you're not in control of things kind of wash away from you. And I learned that, I'm a guy who likes to control things. I run businesses. I have employees. I have companies. I'm a guy who likes to control things. And I thought I could control Christians' sickness, right? I worked for 1 year, 24/7, my wife and I, and a team of just every doctor across the world. But when you go and you finish at the end and you go, look, it took a year and a half before I started writing that book, or even sit down to go through it. you have to release a lot of control. And I think that's something that washes out of you. And I think anyone who's going through pain and suffering, realize that you're not fully in control. And if you realize that, I think you can step back from things and you can just go like, God, it's your will, point me where I need to go. What do I need to do here? You've done this to us. Not sure why, because I don't know why. I'll get my answers when I arrive wherever he wants to put me. But right now I'm focused on how do I get to that place by his will, wherever he directs me. And I truly take Christian's mantra of what's good about today at heart, because I truly focus on what's happening today. I'm only guaranteed what I have right now. That's with you and me, Matt, and your audience. Everything else is blocked out. And so all the distractions, I focus on present moments, where I'm at. That's what I'm guaranteed right now. So I think the more we focus on that, the better.
Happiness isn't just a feeling, it's a skill. And it starts with 5 pillars: authentic relationships, thriving fitness, achieving goals, conquering bad moods, and then choosing good ones. I'll teach you how to master all 5 pillars in my one-on-one happiness coaching. Let's talk. Grab a free 30-minute happiness consultation on my calendar at mattoneil.com/coaching. Your 2 distinctions are so profound. My wife and I, we thought that we lost our baby boy. And it was really traumatic for us. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, when I thought he wasn't going to live, I relinquished all control. Like this whole illusion that I was in control of my life vanished. Right. And up until that moment, I had thought I was in control. And in that moment when he wasn't breathing and the doctors didn't think he was going to live, I was in despair, of course. I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. And I also recognized that only God's in control. And all like that whole, like this bubble that I was in control of anything was just burst. Right. And It was beautiful. Like it was so humbling. Yeah. And that was the second, it's the first thing you said, but it was the second point is this remain humble before God. My book, Good Mood Revolution, the first half is how to get out of the 8 bad moods. And then the second half is how to choose 8 positive emotions. The first of those positive emotions is humility.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
It's humbleness. And it's because it's actually the antidote to the ego, which is prideful and thinks it's in control and thinks it's actually running everything.
Right.
And so in some ways, these tragedies that we have in our life are to give you the conclusion that you came to.
Can I ask you how your son is doing today?
He's a good boy. He's in great health. He made it. The doctor saved his life.
That's wonderful.
And it didn't have to go that way. Right?
Sure.
I recognize it didn't have to go that way. And that was the other. So there was another distinction I got from that experience. And that was, I'm not owed anybody. I'm not owed for my wife to be here tomorrow. I'm not owed for any child to be here tomorrow. I'm not owed another 10 years. I'm not owed another 5 years. Like anyone that's in my life is not owed to me. God doesn't owe, he didn't sign a contract with me and say, no, this person will be here until you're 70. That contract was never signed.
Right.
People are in our life because they're gifted to us today. Every person that we get to be with is a gift today, and they're not owed tomorrow. And that was the other thing. It's kind of this thought that things are owed to me. It's like an entitlement that these people in my life are owed to me, that they have to be here, or that a young man who's 22, who's best friends with everyone in his family, who does everything right, that he's owed to live to 80. We're not. We learned this, that we didn't get that contract that we were going to be here for that many years. I think though that we did get a contract for how many years we were coming. our family lost my nephew at a young age to an aggressive brain cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of knew that he wasn't going to have this super long life, which is interesting.
Well,
we
so
started.
It's interesting. I'm not going to interrupt, but tell the story.
Yeah.
Christian the same way. So, but yes,
and I'll tell you another. One of our good friends lost her daughter to a drunk driver in college. It's a young girl, and she came to her, and she said, "Mama, you don't have to suffer. This was my time." And just powerful, these powerful messages. So it's almost like they came in knowing, hey, I'm going to have this short, brilliant, beautiful existence. I'm going to make my impact when I'm here. But we don't know what that time limit is, we just kind of always have this assumption it'll be 80 years old or 90 years old.
I think ultimately as parents, right, there's a natural order to life, right? And so we are brought up that way. That's how the natural order of life is. Your parents pass. I've lost my parents, and nothing is even, not that, of course, I grieve my parents. They're beautiful people. They lived to be in their 80s. They lived a wonderful life, but nothing compares to losing your child. And it just can. It either rocks you down to the percentages of families that separate are massive. I think I looked this a couple of days back, and it's probably like 70-some% of families, just marriages apart.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. And so how do you keep that together, when you're going through this? And that's tough.
The person listening to this episode has tragedy. I had it said to me like this before. You're either coming out of a crisis, or you're in a crisis now, or you have a crisis coming.
Oh yeah. Everyone does. There's something.
The person listening is either coming out of a crisis, is currently in a crisis, or a crisis is coming. So we all can relate with, hey, and maybe it's a health diagnosis for ourselves, or maybe it's a health diagnosis for somebody that we love, like you experienced, or maybe it's a loss to someone that we loved. That's why, this is the good mood revolution. No life is free of challenge. And the moment that we accept that challenge is just part of it, that crisis is just part of it, then we can start to say, all right, well, so if life will never be challenge free, how do I be the happiest I can be in this challenge-filled, crisis-filled life? And in this mantra, the name of the book, What's Good About Today, is so powerful. What you said, I don't have anything other than this moment. You and me talking right now on this episode, this is what we have in this moment. We go home, I go home, and I'm with my wife, and I'm with my kids. That is all I have, and it's not guaranteed to be here tomorrow. So as we're focusing on all these problems, and it's not quite right, and I wish it was better, and I wish that hadn't happened. It's well, no, all that stuff is happening, but what's good about today? So I want you to dive into some of the principles of the book. Teach us, be our teacher. You've walked the walk. How can the person listening and me get more of this goodness every day, even as challenges happen?
We'll read the book, I hope. But let me say that it's not, the book is inspired. That's why I even say it's written by me, but it's inspired by my son. He is the ultimate in leading a purpose. That's why it's purposely driven life, because I do believe Christian led a purposely driven life. And there are so many excerpts, there's so many tools to use within the book to help people understand how they can lead a perfectly driven life. Let me give you an example. One of the things that Christian taught me, again, everything I tell you are things that I have learned from him. These aren't Chris Cochran rules. These aren't Chris Cochran's ideas. This is Christian. Christian used to have a to-love list. He never had a to-do list. And so I have made a point that when I wake up, I'm writing my to-love list, not my to-do list. So many of us are geared and programmed to certainly you got to get things done. That's not the point. But we're so geared by the gratification of checking things off in our lives that we forget that we're missing the part of how we can do checkoffs of love during our day. Again, I focus everything purely on each single day because just as you said, I have no guarantees of what's happening tomorrow. I can make all the plans I want to do tomorrow. I can make them next week, next month, next year. But that does not mean I will even be here. But I focus on what can I achieve today. And so Christian gave me that guidance.
How often would he make this list?
Every day.
So is this something that was inspired once he got the diagnosis?
No. Christian was that way since he was a little boy.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah. Since he was little, he was always checking off how he could love somebody each day, which tells me how extraordinary of a human being he is from the very get-go.
So he would make this list. Was it one person each day? Or, I want to kind of see what it looked like.
Sometimes it was as simple as we have to-dos and a checklist, write down people's names, people he either knew or someone he wanted to meet knew. Sometimes it'd be just one person. I've seen the list. He would check them off at the end of his day.
If he loved them.
He loved everybody, but he made a point to make sure that he was putting as much love out to that individual in his day. And so, and sometimes it wasn't necessarily, to love less to an individual. Sometimes it was to how much love can he put out in a broad spectrum to the teachers that he was meeting for the day. How, what could he do to give them comfort?
Ever feel anxious, upset, or maybe like something's missing? The problem is never your external circumstances. It's always your internal mood. In my best-selling book, Good Mood Revolution, Igniting the Power of Conscious Happiness, I teach you the exact methods to own your moods and control your best life. Go on Amazon today and get yourself a copy because your best life can't wait. So both of these, this is like success leaves clues, right? And we're talking about some beautiful happiness success patterns here. You described it as the doctors came in and were giving the diagnosis that he could be unraveling, and you're unraveling, and he puts his hand on you and to help you feel better. And then the doctors, I'm sure they had tears in their eyes delivering this news. And he's like trying to make them not feel as bad about delivering the news. How beautiful. This is one of the keys to happiness, is affirming what's good in other people. I'd love to hear some more. So what are some of the other strategies in the book that you teach?
Well, I'll tell this strategy. And again, it's not, it's more of a story. So
I love stories.
So one of the things that Christian, I'd say about 2.5 months prior to him passing, Christian and I went on a walk. And on this walk, it's one of the last walks we had, I remember asking Christian and saying, Christian, do you have any regrets in this life? Because he appreciated the conversations he and I would have because we knew what was coming very quickly. And I hang on his every word because he's such a philosopher, how he looked at life. And I never forget, he says, Dad, I did too much homework. And I said, what? I said, Christian, I'm looking for something like, he said, Dad, no, the only regret I have in this life is that I did too much homework. He was very funny, by the way. He had a great sense of humor. And the point to that is that Christian did not take life so seriously. And there's a lot to be said in that, just don't take life so seriously, because we've heard this before. But that's how he envisioned it. And I think that, again, it goes into how you make a choice to choose goodness and see light, to compliment, or how you choose to be in the present moments, or how you choose to react to situations. And so I think that simple comment, he meant it. The only regret he had was that he did too much homework. Can you imagine? That's your only regret? 22 years of age, so many things have happened. You've just been diagnosed. You're probably going to, he knew he was going to probably pass within 3 months. And that's it. But that's the simplicity of it, because he understood life more than I'll probably ever know, and more people they'll ever know. So he understood it. So that's a story that always resonates, certainly with me, because it just sticks with me in my life. And I always go back to, hey, don't take life so seriously. And life has a plan. God has a plan.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So I did a lot of homework too. Maybe it was too much. We could have been having a little bit more fun, right?
Right. Well, he had fun too, but in his mind, it was too much. And as a kid, I was always on him about doing his homework, which is kind of a comedy. I find the little he loved comedy, so I find it comical that I was always on him about his homework, constantly.
So how about the person that's listening that is struggling today? Maybe something is going wrong. Maybe they're dealing with something. What advice would you give that person?
I'd say my message is one of hope, right? Faith, gratitude, but it's also about resilience and a trust in God's plan. It's a message that came from Christian himself through the way he lived his life, the lessons he taught us. Christian believed that no matter what your challenges you face in your daily life, or that you're going to face, he believed no matter what those were, that there was always something good to hold on to. And that's not just a mindset. It's a testament to faith he had in God and God's love, and a belief that everything happens for a reason. I do believe that this simple act of saying what's good about today, and I say you can say this in the morning, you can say it in the afternoon, say it any time you want, say it time for bed. It's a moment to stop, be present, and go, this is what was good about my day. God gifted me this day, and these are the things I can look at that were beautiful. Yeah, there may have been something that happened early on that didn't turn out good, but you can still do that. So my message is to always look to the light, look to the goodness in others. Christian always did that. And I think that helps us lead. And I'm still trying to lead a purposely driven life. I haven't fully gotten there. I'm always on that journey, but I think Christian outlines that very well. This book is really a reflection of him. I wrote the book in his reflection, how he looked at the world, not how I looked at the world. I certainly tell the stories as a family, and people have asked me, and they said, what's this book about? And I said, it's a love story. It's a love story about a family, but it shows you how a family can come together, how they can look to goodness, and they can find, even in the worst of tragedies, things that are good.
What about the day when you're like, what's good about today? And you're like, nothing.
Well, I guess it depends on what part of the day you ask that.
Because there's some days I get in such a bad funk.
Uh-huh.
And I'll be like, what am I grateful for? And I'm like, nothing.
Yeah.
Do you ever get in that mood?
No, not anymore. I don't. Yeah. Not anymore. Sure, I had those in my past. I don't today, because I do believe there is always something good. I look at your children. That's all you need. Look at your children. Look at your wife. Look at your family. Look at your house. Look at the bed you sleep in. I don't know. I look at the sky. Look at the stars. Look at the animals. I mean, there's so many beautiful things that God has thrust upon us to feel anything other than grateful for the day that you got, no matter how crummy it gets. And listen, I get crummy days, just in normal crummy days, which are mundane by the standards of what I've been through and their family has gone through. Even the day that Christian passed away, we surrounded him around him in our home. He was here at home, surrounded by his pets, his family, his girlfriend, who is now a lawyer in Philadelphia, went on to be a lawyer because he wanted her to be that. There was so much beauty in that. And I'll never forget this. As soon as Christian passed away in front of our eyes, and we witnessed that. I'll never forget. And how many doctors show up at your house? We had doctors that would show up, not because they knew what was happening, but because they wanted to be connected to Christian. They wanted to be in his presence. And a doctor happened to be there the day this was happening. And she grabbed me, hugged me, and she says, I want you to know your son taught us how to live, and he taught us how to die. He was beautiful in every moment of that. And it's always stuck with me. And so even in that absolute awfulness and everything that followed that, enduring, you could still see the beauty in the life that's given to you.
It's powerful. It's powerful. And your story is just powerful. So I know, you said you don't know why he had to suffer what he suffered, but man, how many lives are being improved because of the story of who he is, right? Like,
I surely hope so. I certainly have seen it. I've been witness to it and have had people tell me lives have changed dramatically. I won't know the full measure, as any one of us on this earth will ever know the full measure of what our impact is on so many lives, right? My life is, Christian counted himself as a very fortunate person. He used to remind us always that he was blessed. He was surrounded by love his whole life. He had a beautiful home. He had all the things he could. He traveled overseas. He lived large. He was the prom king in a very large school. He had acted in a big movie, and he had done a lot. He was incredible. He lived this big life. So he always felt very privileged to live this life. He never stopped reminding us of the privilege that he was given. And then to me, that's, you wouldn't find people who are 85 who would say they were granted even the privilege sometimes. So the fact that he only got that amount of time is a testament to his character and how he looked at the world.
Well, I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of you for writing the book.
Proud of you.
For taking such a hard thing in your life and turning it into something so beautiful for me and lessons that I can take with me in my heart today. And for the person that's listening today too, to look at even our hardest days and say there's something good today too. So, Chris, how could people learn more? Where can they get the book? How can they get more involved in this work?
Absolutely. So, of course, you can find me on chriscochranspeaks.com. But if you don't want to go there, learn about my son, christiancochran.org. Before Christian passed away, he asked us to set up a foundation, which we did in his name. It's the Christian Cochran Legacy Fund through the Pittsburgh Foundation. It's a very reputable foundation that's run by the Pittsburgh Foundation. Specifically, he wanted to have us focus on those who are less fortunate, kids who are in need, nature, animals. And we have done just that. We have partnered with charter schools in the Pittsburgh area to give money to continue to promote this message. We give out scholarships. We donate to nature funds. We donate to animal shelters. We also donate a tremendous amount of money, time to something called Young Adult Survivors United, YASU. It's Young Adult Cancer Survivors. So many people who are just starting off their lives from 18 through 35 are hit with these diagnoses, and they have no one. And Christian always reminded us, he even wrote his dissertation paper. He got into grad school during that period of a year. Imagine. He got granted in. He had hopes, even though he knew this was his outcome, he still did not stop moving forward. But his hope was that he could be with those who didn't have the support. He was going to travel overseas and be with those who would die alone. And he didn't want that to happen. And so I think, I want people to learn more about Christian and the works that he inspires us to do. And that would be wonderful. And ultimately, if you buy the book, that'd be wonderful. I think it's a great book, and I think that people can get a lot out of it, and all proceeds go to the foundation. But also just learn about Christian. I think the most important thing any parent wants is not my son to be forgotten. And I want people to know the things he did. So I hope they do that.
It's awesome. And we've done that with thousands today with you coming on the show. Chris, I appreciate you so much, brother.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And I love you and I love your audience. Thank you. And I mean it.
I love you too. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. To wrap up this episode, here are the biggest takeaways that we learned today from Chris. Happiness isn't found in control. It's actually found in surrendering our control. The most important list is not our to-do list. It's our to-love list. You're not even owed tomorrow. Every person in your life is a gift today. Gratitude exists even in the hardest moments. Faith, humility, and presence are the real keys to joy. And Christian's wisdom reminds us, stay humble before God, focus on the now, live with love. My final thought, your life is happening today. Your happiness is your choice. Ask yourself right now, what's good about today? And then come up with some answers. If this episode moved you, share it with somebody you care about, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get happiness every single week.